Christopher, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, I'm happy to be here.
I'm so excited for our
Yeah.
conversation. It's always interesting when you first read about someone,
Mm.
their words on a page, which the bios that we create try to convey the essence of who we are or what we do, but it's never
Mhm.
quite the same. So, this is the fun part is when we get to actually have the conversation and get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between doing and being and our historical record. And hopefully, the historical record that we create will allow us to generate and project our presence through with
Mhm.
clarity into what we're sharing. And today's a great opportunity to be able to serve your community of people who are holistically focused and want to grow and basically squeeze every drop of goodness out of this life.
I love that. I feel that way. The title of the podcast is Live the Width of Your Life. So it's all about doing that. So it's interesting when I read about you because there's so many things that happen at different stages of your life.
Mhm.
And all of us are on our own life's journey. So take me back to maybe a couple of times in your life where, as you look back, you see, okay, this was a learning opportunity that's helped bring me where I am today.
Well, okay. So I went to a privately well endowed boarding school, the wealthiest boarding school in the world. And they built Hershey School in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And they owned Hershey Foods Incorporated. Well, 51% of the voting stock. So that means they always have the positional leverage over the decisions that are being made. And in that school, you have 16 boys or girls in a student home. And these homes are big, like really big, big, big. They're big mansions. Well, there's no housekeepers. Okay. So I arrived when I was 7 years old. And so at 7 years old, every kid has a different chore. And you can imagine everything that needs to be done. And they keep these places spotless. Like you might go to your house and you look at all of your windows, there's some dust on there. No, there's no dust in our windows in Milton Hershey School. Okay. So you're doing the windows every day, you're cleaning all the rugs. My point is this is that to be a 7 year old kid, and instead of having my bike to ride to school and doing things in my own timing and all the ways in which I wanted to do things, I was confronted with having to adapt to how they did things. And I think over time, that helped me become a very consistent force in other people's lives when I asked them to transform and change the way they go about their reality. And so when you're 7 years old, do you want to wash dishes for 20 people? Think about your biggest family event, your house where you have to do dishes. Imagine doing all the pots, all the pans, all the plates, all the dishes, all of the serving dishes, all of the serving utensils, all of it. And imagine being 7.5 years old and being required to do it all by yourself because you said the word shit.
Christopher, how did you end up there? How did you end up going to this boarding school?
My mom committed suicide when she was 29 years old.
Mm.
And initially, I went into foster care in a place called Pottsville, Pennsylvania. And after spending about 6 to 7 months in foster care, my grandmother picked me up. She told me she was taking me to a place to go take a test. And I went to a place to take an IQ test. And me and my brother took the IQ test. And typically, what happens is after you take the test, you go on a list and they're like, okay, we'll call you when there's some space open. And my brother and I took the IQ test, and they were like, yeah, I think we'll take you here today. But no one informed me that that's what was going to be going on. So when my grandmother dropped me off at my student home and she drove away, I just felt this like heavy pit fall into my stomach. And I was like, oh my God, I've been abandoned. I'm
Yeah.
stuck here with these kids that I don't know. This is weird. What's going on? And of course, I said the word and and then I end up having to do all the dishes by myself because I was angry.
Mhm.
And then I learned really quickly that life never goes the way that you imagine, and you have to adapt and adjust to what's in front of you, whether you like it or not. And then eventually, if you do surrender and bend the knee, you're going to end up with a pretty good life. Because in my philosophy, everybody experiences everything that they need to grow beyond their own limitations as an individual.
Wow. Did you get any help, professional help from the trauma of your mom taking her life when you were
No,
a young age?
no, actually, to tell you the truth, no, I didn't get any direct help. What I got was I was extracted from my environment. So I was away from my family. We live at school. And so
Yeah.
I think being in a very neutral environment, it just allowed me the space to work through it on my own. But I never had anyone sit down and talk with me. And I think in retrospect, I wish I had someone to talk to me because I just went through a very tragic family incident where a man broke into my cousin's house, shot him in the chest twice, went upstairs, shot my other cousin in the head, and killed himself. And suddenly I was confronted with, wow, I never really processed my mom's death because this is the first big tragedy in my family since my mom committed suicide 50 years ago. And it was just like, whoa, okay. And it actually took me about 2.5 weeks to get on the other side of it emotionally. I was angry at first, right? I wanted to use some of my Navy SEAL skills to bring some punishment and some retribution. And I just sat with that and prayed and thought, relax. Everything has purpose, even when you don't like it, but it still sucks. So
Yeah.
I never got an opportunity to deal with how much it sucked losing my mom because at Milton Hershey School, they kept me so busy with chores and everything's on a time schedule. Like you wake up at 5:30, you're doing this at 5:45, you're doing that at 6:30, you're doing this at
Mm.
7:15. And so I was so overscheduled and so structured, I never had a time to process emotionally.
Yeah. How long did you stay at the school?
I was there till I was 17,
Wow.
June 2nd, 1986.
Yeah. Did you come to enjoy it or was it?
I came to enjoy my friends. The more activities I got involved in, the better it was for me. I think initially what happened is my tendency when I get stressed is to withdraw. And so I don't want to say I refused to get involved in extracurricular activities, but I was sort of had a little bit of an FU underneath, like I'm not going to participate. I didn't sign up for this. And it took me till I was basically 12 years old to get over that.
Wow. That's a long time. It's 5 years from the
That's
time you.
5 years, right? I was a stammerer. I stuttered. I had to get over that. I was a nail biter. I had to get over that. I was a bedwetter. I had to get over that. I was severely affected emotionally and psychologically.
Yeah. Was your brother with you?
My brother was with me. And we
Okay.
were in the same student home for a while, but I'm 4 years older than him. So when I shifted up to the intermediate division, he was still in the junior division. And then when I went to the senior division, he was coming up to the intermediate division. So we always missed each other after our first 2 years initially of living together, which was tough because it was a strain on our relationship.
Yeah. Wow. So you did that. There's so much that happened there. And then at 17, you graduate. What were you going to do next? Do you have a plan?
What's funny, when you graduate from Milton Hershey School, they give you a suitcase with 3 pairs of pants, 3 shirts, a tie, a pair of shoes, a sport jacket, a winter jacket, and $100 check.
Okay.
Right. So I grabbed my little suitcase and I went out the door and I was off into the real world. And I went to Shippensburg University in Shippensburg, Pennsylvania. And I went to school there. That lasted for a few semesters. And then I was asked by the president of the school if maybe there was something better for me to be doing.
Wow. It's a nice way of saying what happened. Did you just not enjoy it?
Well, what happened for me is at Milton Hershey School, everything is structured. So I never had any chance to really go out and explore my own sense of being social and
Mm.
emotional. I mean, I was at every frat party imaginable. If there was a party, I was there. It was not mandatory to go to class. It was mandatory
Mm.
to take your test, but it wasn't mandatory to show up from school. And I had such a good education from Milton Hershey School that the first few semesters I could just breeze through and do nothing. So I was just shooting pool, playing basketball, lifting weights, and drinking beer. And there was more to college than that, and being social. And there was just more to college than that. And I needed that time to do that.
And I know you joined the Navy SEAL after you stopped going to school. What was the transition into deciding that you were going to go and become a Navy SEAL? Because that seems like another place where there's a lot of rigor and structure and discipline
Yeah,
and
of
maybe some
course.
other things.
Yeah. The difference is I volunteered for it. So as long as I'm volunteering for something, that means my will is engaged. I got all the energy that I need. But if I'm not volunteering for something and my will isn't engaged, I'm just exhausted by the experience that I'm in.
Yeah.
But there was an important step before that. What happened is I had a trust and I used some of that money to open up a sandwich shop. I moved back to the town where my mom was from after I quit school, and I opened up a sandwich shop called the Hoagie King. And 6 months in, I was like, this is okay. The business is okay, but this life sucks. Like getting up at 4:30 in the morning and driving to Pottsville to pick up cold cuts and bread and butter and cheese. I was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So I gave my half of the business to my partner. And then, fortunate for me, a friend of mine that I went to Milton Hershey School with, his mom picked me up on my birthday. She knocked on my door and she was like, hey, you're going to come live with me and my family. And I was like, what? She's like, I've just heard so many special things about you. I want you to come live with me and my family. And I was like, this is interesting. I haven't had this situation before. So
Yeah.
I went and I lived with her and her family. And when I went downstairs into the basement, they had a biannual magazine about SEAL training. And 2 months later, I was gone.
Wow. What appealed to you about it?
What appealed to me was the cover. On the cover, there were like 8 or 10 or 6 boat crews, and guys are running down the beach. Ocean is on their right. They're in the soft sand. They got on combat boots, green khaki pants, white t shirts with their names stenciled on it, and they're running down the beach with a telephone pole over their shoulder. And I remember as soon as I thought that, I was like, these people can challenge me. That's what I need. I need
Wow.
to be challenged. And then I was off. I saw the recruiter, signed up, and boom.
Do you have to interview for this position? What is the process of saying, hey, I want to be a Navy SEAL?
Yeah, the process is you go to a recruiting office, and if you're lucky, you get sort of an ethical recruiter. And at the recruiting office, they're supposed to give you all the information on the programs. But first, they want you to take a test before they explain any programs for you. So it's called an ASVAB test. And I took the test. I scored high enough to get in any of the programs that I wanted. But what I really wanted was to get to SEAL training as fast as humanly possible. And so that meant that I was going to go to a school that was only 2 months long versus like a year-long school where they teach you a skill set that's applicable to the external world. So when you get out of the military, you can get a real job. And so I signed up to be a boatswain's mate, which means basically scrubbing the floors and painting the ship, like really basic stuff. But I was motivated. I only went in because I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I didn't care about rank and I didn't care about my job getting out of the Navy. I knew already what I wanted to do. So I took the ASVAB test. I passed the physical exams and everything else. And then 2 years later, they sent me my orders and I was off to SEAL training.
How long did you stay?
I was in the military for 8 years and 3 months. And I was in the Naval Special Warfare community from 1991 to 1997.
Interesting. What can you tell us about that time and that experience?
What's interesting, the thing about SEAL training, and for anyone who wants to do anything difficult, I think what I've drawn from that experience that's applicable for everyone is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. If you're going to be successful at any one thing, whether it's a plumber, whether it's a professional football player, whether it's a podcaster, like sitting and staring at a computer screen for 6 hours at a time and then editing, that's hard work, right? Yet, if you want to be a successful podcaster and you really care, you've got to investigate your host, you got to put in the time, the energy, and the effort. And so, if you want to be successful at any one thing, the most important thing is getting comfortable being uncomfortable because success is a very long game. Like SEAL training, you got to show up every day, and every day is more difficult. They make it that way so that they can have a high level of attrition. So I started with 149 guys, and I think of the guys that I originally started with, only 13 graduated.
Wow. Is that typical?
That's typical. 92% to 93% attrition rate is pretty average.
And is it physical conditioning? Is it mental strength? Like, what would you say are some of the characteristics that you identified in yourself and others that didn't leave?
I think the guys that make it through SEAL training, the common thread is they dealt with something difficult when they were younger,
Interesting.
right? Maybe it was an overbearing parent, maybe it was a loss of a parent. And the athletes that make it through typically are like swimmers, cross country runners, and wrestlers.
Why do you think?
I think because those sports, they're individual. When you're on a football team, you don't have to give your all on every play. But when you're racing, whether it's track and field or cross country or swimming or wrestling, it's only you out on the mat. It's
Yeah.
you and the other guy. You got to tap into your will and find a way to win.
Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting. So after 8 years, did you know what you wanted to do when you left?
What's interesting, I made that decision. I was already fantasizing a little bit because my life was the best when I was running and I was involved in sports. So I thought, well, I'll get out. I'm going to find a track coach. Maybe training for the Olympic trials would be interesting. Let's see if I can make that happen.
How
And
old
I
were
got
you
it.
at this time?
I was 27.
Is that older for?
Yeah, that's definitely older. But the problem is, I had the body of a Navy SEAL. I no longer had the body of a track runner. And so that was very difficult. So I was top heavy. I had these little bird legs and I'm trying to run. And so at the end of the day, I dealt with a lot of injuries and I was unsuccessful. And so I realized that that was really a fantasy because I didn't do all of my due diligence. I just thought that I have the will to win. I know how to work hard. I'm very disciplined. If I take these attributes that I learned from SEAL training, I can become very successful at that. And the truth is, there was no way that that was ever going to happen because I had turned this body that was fast into a body that was based on endurance. I
Interesting.
could grind it out.
Right.
Yet, when you look at like high level athletes in the Olympics, they're finesse athletes. And I had switched from finesse to basically a grunt. I can keep on going, right? But there's going to be a cost at the end of the day. And the cost was there was pain at every joint in my body on the left hand side from all the stuff that I endured from SEAL training and all the stuff that I endured as a child. My
Yeah.
brain was operating at a lateralized state of function. My right hemisphere was very strong electrically, but the left hemisphere of my brain was basically, nothing was going on over there.
Really? Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
Well, I started losing my hearing, started losing my vision. I was a full blown insomniac. I started having all these physiological issues. I was in my late 20s.
Wow.
And so none of that made sense. And then what I've learned in the last 30 years has helped me realize in retrospect that my brain was heavily lateralized because I was existing in a high state of hypervigilance and basically in fight or flight response 100% of the day. So if you live in that state for too long, your body's going to push back and it's going to give you signs and symptoms. And it gave me a lot of signs and it gave me a lot of symptoms. But still, I had a SEAL team mindset. So I just kept on pushing through as if, well, these aren't problems. These aren't things to be dealt with. You just keep moving through them. And then my body was like, no, that isn't actually how it works, Christopher.
Yeah, you couldn't push through anymore. And it's interesting because you were rewarded for having that resilience, having that grit, doing all the things, even from the education and then into the SEALs training. So, what happened when you were forced to slow down and identify that maybe things are not going as well as I thought they were?
Well, the truth is, I wasn't smart enough, to be honest with you, to make that decision all on my own. I was in a car driving from Ocean Beach, San Diego, to Point Loma, and, well, technically De Anza Cove, and a car ran through a stoplight and hit me going 40 miles an hour. And so the twisting and the force of that accident is what forced me to start to cope, deal with what was going on underneath, because now I was in excruciating discomfort that would never ever leave my body no matter what I did. So I bent the knee and I reached out for help, and I asked a friend who had been through SEAL training, was going to the same university that I was going to, had his own physical aspirations, and he knew a lot more than I did about health and wellness. And so he taught me some yoga and he introduced me into juicing. And my favorite beverage at the time was beer and whiskey. And so you can imagine what that first parsley, carrot, apple, celery juice was like. Oh,
Right, because the beer and the whiskey's not quite medicinal. And so you're coping, but it wasn't necessarily the same way. So I know as part of your story, you spent a lot of time rebuilding your body, but also really focusing in. Do you think that you would be doing what you're doing today, which I want to get to, if it weren't for the accident?
no. No. So I look at the accident as something that spread my width, because I think the thing what happens is when you have that SEAL team mindset, you have been so successfully institutionalized into the idea that pain doesn't really matter. What matters are your goals. And so you can look out into the real world. You have a guy named David Goggins. He's the guy that pushes through whatever pain he has, and he shows up and he's consistent, and he uses his mind to never allow his body to override what he's feeling or thinking. And a large portion of the population in the world, he's highly beneficial. But for somebody who was like that, and I understand the limitations of those ideas, then that isn't the idea that I have. So I built an entire different science around the new idea, which is spread your width, look at the data objectively, and reassess and get into balance as you move towards your goals. And anything that's got you in a state of out of balance, you should be able to sift through and filter through and figure out why you're comfortable living in an out of balance state, and look into your past, into the historical record of your ancestors to see what you can find in terms of a limiting belief that's causing you pain and discomfort and humiliation and separation and loss.
Wow. So, how did you learn what you had to learn in terms of first healing yourself and then being able to do this with your clients?
The first step was taking the advice that my friend gave me and then applying it every day. So then I bought a juicer, right? And I bought a juicing book. I'm looking at all the little things. And of course, I'm like a sugar hound. So of course, I'm choosing all the sweet juices.
Yeah. Which one can taste the best?
Yeah, yeah. What tastes the best, right? And then I just got into cleansing and detoxification, and I read every book that I could, and I applied these different strategies, and I hired everyone that I could to give me information that knew more than I did. And then I applied their strategies to see what the results were. So basically, I turned myself into a guinea pig. And then I reassessed every day at the end of the day, was that valuable or not? How did it affect me mentally? How did it affect me emotionally? How did it affect me spiritually? How did it affect me energetically? And then what happened is my energy kept getting higher, right? My discomfort started lowering, and then my awareness kept increasing. And so as long as my awareness was increasing, my energy was increasing, I was sleeping better, I was more restored, and I was having greater impact on the lives that I was affecting, and I was happier and more joyful and more consistent emotionally, that I felt like what I was doing had value.
That's interesting. So, as you were focusing in on these different modalities and you're focusing in on really taking care of yourself holistically, did you start to notice that the pain started to diminish? And then did you regain full hearing and some of the things that were happening on the left side of your body?
Yes, 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 all of that. How would I say it? Like when you start squinting at 30 years old, and all of a sudden I'm holding my phone this
I'm well
far away
aware.
from my face, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is weird. This shouldn't be
Yeah.
happening. This doesn't make any sense. Why is this happening? And I think for me, because I was someone who always questioned things, my questioning, my asking why always led me to prayer. And then the prayers were always answered in a way that God would always send me someone who knew how to answer the next question that I had. And I think the culmination and the assimilation of my spiritual path, which was never questioned. I always believed in God. I understand the value of Jesus. I value the understand of all the ascended masters and the ones, all of those really great beings. And I pulled from all the teachings. I love philosophy. So this healing journey allowed me to pull from everything that I had already experienced in my life and utilize every bit of it to my benefit. And so I got my vision back. I got my hearing back. I haven't had pain in my body in 24 years. I'm going to be 60 and I'm more flexible than I've ever been. I'm stronger than I've ever been. I need less sleep. I'm more rested. I'm more effective. I'm smarter than I've ever been. And that continues to increase every single day, every single week, every month, every year.
That's amazing. So, you took all this knowledge. You're like, wow, I'm the guinea pig. I've used it, it's working, and you're collecting more and more information. And I love that you talk about faith because I think that it's just such a critical part, I think, of so many of our stories. So, where did your faith come from? You said you never doubted or questioned.
Yeah, I think how do I say this? I went to a non denominational, first, I was raised Catholic. And then after my mom took her life, the boarding school was a non denominational church, right? And I went to church every Sunday. I only missed church twice in the 10 years that I was there. So you imagine that's at least
It's a lot of church.
that's a lot of church, right? And so
Yeah.
we sang in church, we listened to scripture. There was always someone who was hired to come in and give us this resounding speech that was spiritually focused. And so I got to be introduced to a lot of spiritually focused people. And so every Sunday we had another guest that would come in from somewhere in the world. And imagine, like, Milton Hershey School is worth about $22 billion. So you can
People are
imagine
coming.
that, yeah, people are coming that have done something in the world.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting about going to school there, we always had other people who came into what was called assembly. And they were teaching us about animals or about music, or they were magicians, or they were psychotherapists. So I was always being introduced to the most successful people in the world at every single avenue, right? In every single niche in society professionally. And I just think that hearing those messages again and again and again and again and again and again, they were bleeding into me. And then when your mom dies, who do you have to lean on when you're in foster care? Like, I pray. I pray at night. I pray that this will change. Like, get me the hell out of here. Why me? Some of my
Yeah.
prayers, they were why me prayers. Some of my prayers were like, I hate you. Like, I was happy with the life that I had. Why are you doing this to me? And it wasn't always like pretty. It wasn't always comfortable, but at least it was honest, right?
Hmm. Yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah, and so faith for me is understanding that there's a purpose for my life and for everyone's life. And it's my job to stay focused on the mission and the purpose that God gave me and to refrain from judging, criticizing, and disapproving of everyone else's life, because when I do, I'm competing with God. And every time I've ever competed with God, I have lost every single time.
You too.
Yes, yes, I've lost every single time. And so finally, I'm just like, okay, I'm done competing with you. All
Yeah.
right. I'm done wrestling with you. It doesn't work. And so I decided just to bend the knee.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've talked about that a couple times in your life where you're just like, okay, I try to do this on my own might and strength, and then okay, I'm ready to surrender, to bend the knee, as you say, and just allow blessings to come in instead. So you used your experience, you healed yourself, you're working through it, and you're feeling really healthy now. How did you decide that you were going to take all these learnings and turn this into your career?
Did I decide that? I was doing all this work on myself. And then this very interesting, it's like full circle. I met this woman again this year. This woman came to me who was a friend of a friend who was struggling with some things. And she was like, hey, I heard you've been working with this very interesting guy. Da, 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 da. Would you be able to help me? And I was like, really? Okay, well, I could just do to you what he did to me.
Yeah.
And I started working on her within like 5 minutes. She was like laying on the floor in a ball of tears in the fetal position, crying. And to me, I'm a Navy SEAL. I've got all that training to institutionalization from boarding school, 18 years of that. I'm looking at her and I'm like, what is she doing? Why is she crying? We're just taking tension out of her body. None of it made
Yeah.
any sense to me because I didn't put two plus two together. Like, stress and tension in your body is related to your historical record of something that's unresolved at an emotional level. And if you
Mm,
remove that, then you're creating space for the old unresolved emotions to leave and allow the person to ascend to a higher new state of function, psychologically, emotionally, energetically, physiologically, and structurally. And I had no idea. I didn't really take enough time to think about that idea. And then once I had that experience, it made me very uncomfortable. If I'm really honest, I was thinking to myself, like, in my head, what the hell is she doing? Why is she crying? Well, once I investigated and started to understand, she started to share with me that she went through all these difficult things as a child. And then I was like, ding, 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 ding. And then a light turned on. And I was like, oh, now I get it, because I hadn't yet had a cathartic event.
oh, you hadn't.
No, no, no. It took me, I think, probably my third year into doing what we're doing. My business partner at the time, his name was Nick, and Nick was working on my bladder channel, my lateral hamstring on the left, and he was ripping tension out of there. And then all of a sudden, I just felt like this, my heart, like, and then all this anxiety came into my chest. And then I rolled onto my side and I cried. And I don't mean like weeping, I mean heaving for 4 hours. No
Wow.
exaggeration, for 4 hours.
And that's like an emotional release.
Yes.
Wow.
And when I got up after those 4 hours and I looked at myself in the mirror, literally the first thought in my head was like, who the is this?
Wow.
I've never seen this person. I don't know who you are. Because then I think what was happening, my nervous system had become so focused on my identity, which was developed as a response to all the trauma that I dealt with as a child, so that I could sort of avoid humiliation, discomfort, pain, and loss. That once that caused the development of my identity to surface. Once that pain was out, my nervous system was literally like, who are you? I don't know who you are. And it took me weeks. And then I wanted to have that event again. And then it took me maybe like another 3.5 years till I had another episode like that for hours. And then everything was different after that.
Isn't it interesting? We always want to have it again. When I facilitate breath work, I always tell people, don't expect the same experience next time. You might fall asleep next time. It might be completely different. We don't always get what we want. We get what we need in the moment. So now you've gone through your own experience. So now you can see what might happen and what they need.
Yeah.
So how long was this? Give me the age range. So how old were you at the time?
Yeah.
When
So
this was-
now, so now I have the cathartic event at 36.
Okay.
And then I have the next cathartic event at 38.
Okay. And are you now, is
No,
this
no,
now
no, that's not
permanent?
true. I had the next cathartic event at 38, and then one again at like 40, and then another big one at 43.
Okay. And so when did you decide that, oh, this is my life's work? This is what I want to do. This is what I want to help guide other people through.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. The first year into this, I got a download. Here's what happened. I was in bed with a friend, and we were laughing and joking, and she's laying on her right side, and I'm laying on my right side. And all of a sudden, at the bottom of my bed, I hear this sound that goes, "Zhoop." And I look down there, and there's this white diamond at the bottom of my bed, like the shape of a star. And then
Huh?
all of a sudden, all of this white light comes at me, and it's blasting into my forehead. I'm just convulsing, and she's hitting my thigh, and she's going, "Stop messing around." And I'm like, "I'm not messing around. You should look towards the end of the bed."
Did she see it?
No, she doesn't see it, right? And so this goes on maybe, I don't know, it's got to be at least 90 seconds to 3 minutes. It could have been longer. And then all of a sudden it stops. It goes back to the diamond. I watch and it closes. And as soon as it closes, she turns over and goes, "What are you talking about?" And in that moment, I realized that certain things are for certain people. Certain people are meant to experience certain things. And I realized then that's when the download came. All the information, what I was meant to do, how I was meant to do it, all of that came through me. And I think they came through me and they trusted me because they're like, look at this guy. Look at this human down here busting his rear end 6 to 7 hours a day to make sure that he rewrites his historical record.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. So you've got the download, Christopher, and now you're like, okay, something special here. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. How has that experience changed the rest of your life and what you're doing?
Yeah. I think what happened for me is after I got the light, all that light came in, and you have to remember it came into my third eye. It came to my third and my forehead, and I'm convulsing. It's going into every cell of my body. And I didn't know what was going on. Look, I was raised on a farm in a boarding school in Hershey, Pennsylvania. This is way outside of my frame of reference.
You weren't reading about star seeds and you do.
Yeah. No, I'm a normal dude. I'm just a hardworking, blue collar class guy.
Yeah.
And then this comes in, and what was told to me is very simple. This is a 30-year plan, and this is how you're going to go about this. And I was like, okay. And he basically just told me, you're going to follow every breadcrumb I lay down in front of you. All you need to do is follow the breadcrumbs. If you go off path, there's going to be a very big sign that you've gone off path. I was like, okay, that's pretty simple. And because of that experience, I never have any doubt. Like, if I get to the airport and I miss a flight, I know I was meant to miss the flight.
Mm.
If a flight is canceled, right? Let's say I'm flying to Russia and connecting through Taipei. I know if the flight is canceled in Taipei, it's meant to be canceled. So, so imagine being able to move through the world where you very rarely have any doubt about your timing, where you're supposed to be, or who you're supposed to be with.
I mean, I think that's the very definition of living by faith, right?
Yeah, that's the ultimate spiritual leverage.
Yeah. You're like, it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. If somebody's like, I don't want to work with you anymore and blah, 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 I'm like, it's all fine. Like, I just move on,
You
have
You
fun.
must drive people crazy.
I drive them crazy. So, yeah.
People are really controlling and like are so rigid. And when you have that sort of attitude, I think that people, one, don't understand it because if they don't live that way, don't have that kind of faith. But two, it's also just a reflection back to them of their own personal struggles when they feel otherwise.
Yeah, I am, how do we say that? My presence is strong
Mhm.
because on that day, my presence was giving back to me to be able to have while I was in a body, right? And I know when I look back, the only reason why that happened is because all of the work that I was putting in. Because
Yeah.
there's no way the divine was going to go, yeah, we're going to give you your presence while you're in this really like distorted body, distorted brain with this distorted emotions and nervous system. There's no way we can give this to you.
You got to be a clean vessel.
Yeah, you have to be a clean vessel. And so I
Mhm.
did a 40-day fast. I thought, well, Jesus fasted for 40 days. I'll fast for 44.
As a Navy SEAL, as you would,
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to one up him for sure.
did you just have water? What was your fast
No,
like?
my fast was very interesting. I made sure that I had a colonic every day
Hmm.
or two enemas. And then I did juice twice a day. I did
Uh-huh.
herbal tea, which was chamomile and peppermint. And then I did broth from boiled vegetables that was strained. So to replace the minerals that my body wasn't getting. And that was a process. And then on the 44th day, guess what happens? 9/11, right?
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. So that was intense. So then I had to come off the fast quickly.
Yeah. Whew. I mean, I could talk to you for days. This is incredible. Christopher, if people want to work with you, and I'm sure that they would, or if they want to follow you and learn more about the amazing client testimonials and the work that you've done, what's the best place that they can find you?
Well, there's two places. One, I put a bunch of information on Instagram. I give little downloads here and there and there and here. That's a place to go if you want inspiration and education. But if what you're looking for is to get more vested in the things that we're doing, I wrote a book called Free for Life, a U.S. Navy SEAL's Path to Inner Freedom and Outer Peace, and that's available on my website at truebodyintelligence.com. You can go to Facebook or YouTube, True Body Intelligence. We're always posting and giving information. And information is lovely and knowledge is nice, but I think inspiration and
Yeah.
getting to know someone, like the way that you go about it is, I've been on a lot of podcasts and I have to say that you are masterful at what you do.
Christopher, you're so kind. I just love people and I love their stories. So I'm naturally very curious. And that's why I'm like, I could talk to you for longer. I want to hear even more. And I hope we have an opportunity to do that. But
No, that'd
I'm
be
so
great.
grateful. And I know you've used the word width a couple times, but I would love to ask you what it means to you to live the width of your life.
I mean, to live the width of my life is me waking up in the morning like I did today and going through my Bestercise program, doing my meditation, doing my attunements, getting in my sauna and dry brushing my skin and just being devoted to my own personal growth every day and then sharing that positive energy that I have with the people that I share that day with. And so living the width of my life is the commitment that I have to myself to raise my light and then to share that light with anyone who comes in front of me.
So beautiful. Seems so simple, but yet it is not. It is a daily choice and commitment. Thank you so much for being such a bright light in the world,
Thank
Christopher.
you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you. Have an amazing day.
You too.